Hey, here we are. Hey, here we are. Just getting started. It's a bit hard to be back at home and have to adjust to the setup and the rhythm, but here we are, another Sunday morning, episode 53. And what a day it's going to be. I'm going to have to edit some of this out later, but that is a problem for another day, so to speak. Here we go. That's fine, right? Okay. Just move some paperwork around. This is an administrative podcast from now on. Whew. Back in my kitchen. Hey friends, 53% of people of 4 years and up in the country where I live in do not meet the minimum requirements for daily movement. That means they don't move 30 minutes a day. Okay? That's something we're going to talk about. And we're going to talk about that in light of the holiday that I just had and all the things that we did, that I did, including bringing my kettlebells on holiday and how that affects, my commitment and life choices when it comes to health and fitness. But hey, for those of you who are watching, my name is Toby. I am 41 years old and I train to live an active, self-sufficient and adventurous life. I do so by minding my sleep. I try to get between 7 and 9 hours in a night. I do so by minding what I eat. I try to eat within my energy balance. I try to eat whole foods, lots of greens, lots of vegetables. Thanks for the support, I appreciate that. And on days where I work out with weights, I try to eat sufficient protein to support my strength and muscle building goals. On non-training days, it's usually between 60 and 80 grams, so it's about 1 gram per kilogram of body weight. And on other days, it's between 80 and 100 grams, so that's slightly over 1 gram per kilogram of body weight for me. That's not ideal for different goals, but for my longevity goals, that is more than sufficient. Benjamin, thanks for dropping by, saying hi. I hope you're doing all right. I hope life is treating you well, and I hope you're doing well where you're at in the world. Sadly, the view today is my kitchen again. So now the podcast is about me again, not about the view. I do miss it already, and on the other hand, it is nice to be home, and we'll talk a bit about that in a moment also. But I just, went through a whole bunch of statistics this morning to remind myself of the importance of what it is that we're doing and what we're talking about. So I was talking about food, I was talking about my movement. I train 30 minutes a day. That could be kettlebell, that could be mobility, that could be endurance, that could be HIIT. But at least there's always 30 minutes in the day where I'm doing something. And usually I'm active for a lot more time throughout the day and throughout the week, to make sure that I am using my body and that my body stays functional, and that I maintain general health and fitness. I don't need to be able to run a marathon. I would like to be able to walk to the supermarket and back with a heavy bag of groceries for the next 30 or 40 years. So, that's where my focus for training goes. But apparently, and I was also a bit shocked just by the numbers, right? You read them. I read them like 6 months ago, and then you put them away, and then you revisit them, and you start to read them, and they just get drawn in, because there's something really strange that is going on. And let's start with one of the big ones, right? So the minimum guideline for movement is 30 minutes, 6 days a week in the country where I'm at, okay? 30 minutes, 6 days a week. Ooh, look, my coffee is done. It's been a while since I've had a properly brewed cup of coffee. I've been having this coffee from these machine cups for a month, so I'm very happy to actually be back on the regular drip, so to speak. Okay, that's good coffee. I don't think a lot of things can come close to that. But the minimum requirement for movement, 30 minutes a day for 6 days of the week, okay? That's it. 30 minutes of movement while training, not deadlifting 150 kilos of the floor, not, running at full speed, just moving, okay? We're not even hitting that, basically, all right? There is a disproportionate amount of people, more than half, right? I mean, if you said 10% of people, 15%, be like, okay, sure, I get it, law of averages, whatever. But 53% of people, right? That shocks me. And I'm sure that for part of those, the population, there's a good reason why they can't do it. We're not talking about that. But if you're an adult, if you have time, if you have the energy, the ability, what are you doing with your time? And there are a couple of reasons why this is important, and I know I'm very much aware of these facts, but I don't think everyone has this top of mind. In this country, in the Netherlands, we expect people to be obese by 2050, right? The percentage of the population that is expected to be, overweight by 2050, 64%. It's going to be up from slightly over half today, right? In 20 years, expect that to grow by another 12 percentage points. Percentage points, okay, not percent, because that will be like put us at like the 56% mark. 12 percentage points, so 64%, 2/3 of the population is going to be overweight. And there are a lot of risks to health when we carry around too much excess weight. It's just a medical fact. There's nothing wrong with us as being persons when we struggle with weight maintenance, etc. I know I do. I have and I do. Doesn't make us a bad person. But there are just significant challenges. 1 in 3 people after the age of 45 is expected to develop a form of diabetes type 2 after 2035. Okay, so it's the age bracket that I'm going to be in. Okay, so 1 in 3 people is going to live with diabetes after the age of 45, expected after 2035, so 10 years from now. So if you're in your mid-30s and you're headed to your mid-40s in the next decade, the risk of you having to live with that disease increases. And it is diabetes type 2, or overweightness, and then the metabolic syndrome that becomes prevalent when we do that, that actually leads to a slew of risks for all kinds of other diseases that could be done without and avoided. It's a lot of medical stress, physical stress that we can live without. And I'm talking about this, I'm interested in this for me, because it seems that the risk of me, by just going about my day, the risk of me, when I just go about my day without focusing on my health and fitness, of developing these kinds of afflictions that are preventable, seems to be increasing over time. So what's going on in the world? What's going on in society that is letting me, or that is leading us down this path? Well, we can talk about that in a bit more detail. And if you want to ask me anything about the way I look at that, go ahead and check out the chat, the poll, or just leave a comment or some support there. Okay. But we are running a sleep debt, for example, as a society, meaning that when I say I try to sleep 7 to 9 hours a night, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to hit 8 hours. Okay, so I need to be in bed 9 hours before my wake-up time to give myself a relatively decent chance of hitting anywhere between 7 and 8 hours of sleep. This requires a conscious effort on my end, because there are so many things that I could be doing. I could be out with friends, I could be gaming, I could be scrolling, I could be watching, right? I could be active, I could be sporting, you name it, okay? But I need to manage my life so that I am at home and in bed around 8:30, 9 p.m. because I wake up at 5 to do my workouts. Okay? It's a trade-off. But we're running a sleep debt, and when we don't sleep enough, we don't feel good, we eat more, we increase the risk of developing certain diseases over time as we accumulate sleep debt over a year, over a decade, over a lifetime. Okay? Sleep is something we need to take very seriously, because it's one of those superpowers that we have to ward off disease, discomfort. Actually, if we sleep well, we might find more energy to do other things that contribute to our health and fitness, which is why I always start with sleep when I say, this is what I aim to do with sleep, this is what I aim to do with food, this is what I aim to do with movement, this is what I aim to do with connection, this is what I aim to do with learning and mastery. Okay? So we're running a collective sleep debt. We're not sleeping well, we're not sleeping enough, and that might be affecting our health. Okay? 1/3 in people between 12 and 18, so these are kids that are going to be adults at one point, moves enough, as in meets those minimum requirements. 1/3. Between 18 and 25, about half moves enough. Okay? Again, moving enough meaning hitting those minimum requirements. Whew. Okay. So again, thinking about all the people that are out there, there's about half of us that are, more than half of us that are not doing not vested enough in the potential positives of movement. And because we're not vested in the potential positives of movement, maybe we're trading that time to do other things, and I just listed a whole bunch. But predominantly, it is not the sedentary life. I mean, I sit for probably 8 hours a day. But when I have to hike up or choose to hike up a mountain 2.5 hours, 10 kilometers, I can do it, and I can still go for a 10-kilometer hike afterwards with the family, carrying someone on my back, and be fit and happy about that, okay? But I didn't get to that level of fitness without putting in some effort and some time, and that involves moving at least 30 minutes every day. So you see the trend here, right? That if you are trying to be healthy, it seems that we've collectively agreed that, there's a different standard to what health is. There's the minimum requirement, and then there's what we're actually doing. If we look at outdoor play, for example, all right, between 12 to 18 years old, playing outdoor twice a week. In 2001, this was 81% of the population. Fast forward 20 years, 72% of the population. That's a 9 percentage point decrease, okay? And the trend is that that's going to keep decreasing. Poor man's Jin, how are you doing? Hope you're doing okay. It's good to catch you live, and it's good to see that you've been keeping up and you're doing cool stuff. And as you can see, I am back home, and I'm going to go out for a short walk this morning to start the day. So, playing outdoors twice a week is in decline, twice a week, right? I think as a kid, I was playing outdoors 7 days a week, okay? I was out every day. We went out the back door, into the playground, into the garden, into the street, wherever. We were always outside. I cannot imagine not being able to do that, but I can also see where we might be living in more urbanized locations. We might have more things that are keeping us in-house at the moment, right? That are keeping us away from physical activity, that we're engaging with more. But the age bracket is shocking as well, right? 12 to 18 years old. I mean, this is when you're, still full of energy and abundance. We went to get some sleep well. We went to a playground on top of the mountain, and I went with the two boys because their mother needed to work, my wife needed to work. And we got to the playground and they were off, right? 10 a.m. They were off. I saw them again at 3 p.m., give or take. Barring snack breaks and hygiene breaks. I saw them 5 hours later. They were digging, they were building, they were riding, walking bicycles, they were climbing, they were swinging, they were sliding, they were doing all kinds of stuff, but they were constantly on the move for 5 hours, okay? We need to do more of that as we are adults. We need to find that state of play every day for, at least 30 minutes, but preferably a bit more. But the trend is just less, okay? What we're doing more of is sitting. 12 to 25-year-olds, 10 hours a day of sitting. Jacuzzi 27, hey, thanks for dropping by. I hope you're doing well. And I appreciate you dropping by and saying hi. And I'm glad that you're liking the content. And I hope that you're doing well where you're at in the world. It's all connected, right? Like the kettlebells, mobility is a starting point. But that's not life, right? I always say I have 23 and a half other hours in the day that I need to fill with other stuff. And I think everyone has that. I think the idea is that that is like meeting the minimum requirement off the bat at the start of the day, and then we move on to whatever we fill our days with, and we take it from there. But we sit 10 hours a day. Okay, can we sit 9.5 and do 30 minutes of kettlebell, or 30 minutes of any kind of physical exercise? We're also standing still a lot and kind of just flicking through things, right? At least 15 minutes a day, probably closer to an hour and a half on average. But there are also people who are doing this 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 hours a day. And by the way, if you're saying, well, that's my job, okay, I would expect, that there's something about the scrolling versus the creating versus the curating and maybe responding. So it can't be 8 hours of simply swiping through content and consuming content. There needs to be some other activity there, so that should come down to 3, 4 hours a day. Just offering that perspective to kind of reconfigure and rethink where the other 4 or 5 hours maybe are coming from, or 2, 3 hours, or 1 to 2 hours in the day that we're doing things that are not movement. Because it's a trade-off, right? We all have 24 hours. Smart start. Thanks for dropping by. I hope you're doing well, and I hope that life is treating you well today. It's a trade-off, right? It's a trade-off where we have 24 hours in a day, and we are sleeping, we are eating, we are working, and then we're doing other things. And a part of those other things, hopefully, is movement. But we need to mix that in properly. And if we're not moving, we're doing something else. I'm not talking about taking care of ourselves and making sure that we have food, that we have income, all those kinds of things. But there's 2 or 3 hours in a day, probably maybe 1.5, depending on how many jobs you need to work, where you need to really think what you're spending that time on. Okay? And I catch myself doing this all the time nowadays. And I talked about this during my holiday as well, is I had this dumb phone with me, and there was no need for me to be checking my phone throughout the day because there was nothing there to see. I get home, I see my phone, I pick it up, and immediately I spend 5 minutes scrolling, or 10 minutes, right? Reading stuff on Reddit, looking at shorts and videos. So there are things that we're doing with that time, and we're not seeing how limited the time is that we actually have to do the things that really matter, because we're distracted and we think we can do it on the fly. We don't think that it takes away from our time doing other things, but actually cooking can be done in 15 or 20 minutes. Now it takes 45 minutes because we're constantly checking our phone. First we spend 5 minutes looking for a podcast, then we scroll through some stuff that we want to catch up on, and then a message comes in that we need to reply to immediately. All of that interrupts the flow of what needs to be done. So a task that would take 10, 15 minutes normally now takes twice as long. Okay? That is time taken out of those 90 minutes to 2 hours that we have to do other things in the day. We don't have a lot of time on a working day to do a lot of things. Barry Kuda, thanks for dropping by, saying hi. Hope you're doing well. Do I have any time management secrets? Let's see. I think the most important thing is to decide what you want to get out of life, what you want to get out of the day, and then spend time on those things first, right? Because if you do that, then there's no time for all of the other stuff. So if it's important to spend time with family, if it's important to get good sleep, if it's important to eat healthy food, if it's important to get that movement and the training in, if it's important to show up and do a good job and deliver good work every day, right? And you invest your time in that. It's 8 hours, 16 hours. Eating properly 3 times a day is probably an hour and a half, right? So that's 17.5 hours. We have, 6.5 hours left. Spend time with family, morning and evening, maybe 3, 4 hours. So here we have 2.5 hours left. Do some exercise, 1 hour, one and a half hours left to do fuck all, whatever we want. But picking the things that we want to get out of life, picking the things that we want to get out of the day, and then doing those first, and organizing your day and your time around that, and you'll see that anything that interferes with your ability to do that is a distraction that needs to be resolved. Okay, I think that's probably the key to kind of doing more of the things that we want to be doing, and it will very quickly show you, on that list. Very few people, I think, will put doom scrolling at the top of that list. Maybe nowadays more people will do it, but you get where I'm coming from with that. And then the second thing to that, just to help you on your way, these posts about morning routines where they have like 5-minute blocks for everything. Yeah, that's complete nonsense. Okay, so if you're trying to manage your time, things take time. Switching between things takes time, and there is a limited number of things that you can do in a day. I have a workout, I have breakfast, I have a commute and work, I have dinner, and we have bedtime. That's a weekday, give or take, right? I squeeze some things in between, left and right, but those are the big chunks of time throughout the day. There are a lot of things that need to happen in those times, right? In those blocks. So you need to be on that. There's very little room for distraction. Distraction just stretches out the process. So just keep that in mind, okay? That you want to have big chunks of things, time for things that need to get done. If you have some time left, that's great. Sit and stare out the window. Boredom is underrated, okay? It's actually really good for our brains, but we need to do more and more of it. Of adults, 50 to 67-year-olds, I hope that helps, by the way, let me know in chat. 44% meets the minimum movement guidelines, and 42% trains weekly, or 58% does not. Okay. So what are we doing? When I traveled, I took kettlebells with me. I don't think everyone needs to do that. I think that's a me thing. Right, I also stream and do workouts to show what consistency looks like. So it's kind of like a point of my channel that I travel with some equipment maybe, or if I didn't, I would be able to do it with body weight. Like I did on our last holiday, I couldn't take equipment with me. You don't have to do that. But I think the point of the commitment, sorry, there's a sneeze coming up, which I don't want to come through. The point of the commitment is that regardless of where I am, every day I want to be doing something that is going to keep me fit and healthy, that engages me physically, that engages me mentally, that gives me that little boost of something that is going to help me feel good about who I am and what I'm doing, okay? I look at these numbers and I bring that up, right? And I look at my travel schedule, and we picked an active holiday for the last 2 years, and every holiday actually we try to do active things, but specifically the summer vacation, we picked an active type of holiday because it's good for the kids. Like I said, they got to move every day. They walked 5 to 10 kilometers easily on a day. The youngest one maybe got carried for half of that, but the oldest one just walked, okay? We moved every day. We moved every day for at least 2 to 3 hours. I did a bit more because I did extra hikes. I would actually hike up to the peaks where the family would take the elevator. There's no point in taking young kids on those 2.5-hour uphill hikes. They are incredibly tiring and somewhat taxing on the body. But downhill hikes, around the paths hikes, around the valley hikes, basically staying at the same level, slight elevation, and descents are fine. But we choose that specifically because it is a trigger to be active. You're outdoors, rain, fog, sunshine, you're moving, right? Because that's the kind of leisure time that we don't really have in the day-to-day, the drudge of the day-to-day. Now you could have an active holiday, visiting a city and walking around as well. You'd be moving for 30 minutes easily day-to-day as well, so I'm not saying anything about that. It's more about making different choices in how we spend our day. And when I look at the numbers, I think the deck is stacked against us, okay? Especially in the country where I live in, but I don't think the statistics are particularly different wherever you're at in the world. The deck for sleep, the deck for food, the deck for movement, the deck for connection, which, we think online connection is the same as in-person connection, but it really isn't. We had friends visit where we were for the last week on holiday. We spent the holiday together, so the kids could play together. We, as 4 adults, could sit around, walk around, talk, chat. And it was a great time. And it was real connection, real experience. And when do you get to spend a week with friends, right? Like 3, 4, 5 hours a day. When? For 5 days in a row. It's a great way to fill the time. But the deck's stacked against us because, we're busy, we're working, we're consuming, we're distracted, and we're trying to do all of these things while trying to maintain a facade of life to the outer world, or while purviewing people's lives through an online, very curated lens. Maybe we should spend a bit more time out there living. My mother has got diagnosed with osteoporosis. She's excited every year. I'm sorry to hear that, yeah. I think that being 79 years old, I hope she's healthy and well otherwise, and that, she has family and friends that care about her, like you. Spend time with her. I'm not sure what the prognosis is with osteoporosis, but I do know that over time, even despite exercise, right, we're fighting deterioration. I sound very Dutch. Well, thanks, probably because I am Dutch. So if that shines through in whatever you're hearing, then that probably is why. We cannot avoid what happens to our bodies at old age. I think that is simply a fact of life. But I'm very sorry to hear that she's feeling discouraged. I think maybe once the bitterness of a diagnosis of a condition sets in and is kind of like passes, there's a way to look at what is possible. But it's a hard process to be confronted with, your body's how should I put it? Your body's decline as we age. Goedemorgen, as we say in Holland. I appreciate you dropping by. Barracuda, I wish you and your mother all the best in terms of what's going to come. And let me know how it goes and what the doctors say and how it develops. Hopefully she finds a way, and all of you find a way together. So I'm looking at these numbers, right, and I see these cards are stacked against us. I talk about, that after 30 we're basically fighting decline, and we fight decline by sleeping well, by eating well, by moving well, and that will hopefully ward off a lot of preventable diseases, but There are no guarantees in life. We could be doing everything right, and still, genetics in life will have its course with us. But looking at the choices we make, looking at the choices I make, right? I try to make as much of an active life as possible, because I understand that all of the activity that I'm able to fit in throughout a day is going to contribute in some way to me maintaining ability and staying healthy for a longer and extended period of time. That's all I have for you today. I would like you to remember that you're good just the way you are. We've got to love ourselves before we can move on. It's the person we are today is going to get us to where we want to be tomorrow. So a bit of kindness goes a long way. And there are enough people out there who want to put us down. Thanks for answering the poll, by the way. So we lift ourselves up, and in this community we lift each other up. Okay? The only way to get anything done, friends, is by showing up and doing the work. So you want to see what that's like. For me, hit like, subscribe, follow me, drop by for any of the other streams I do, check out some of my videos, some of the conversations we're having, and we'll continue the conversation again tomorrow with a workout back home from my kitchen. Until then, take care, be well, and I'm going to go out for a morning walk and start today. And remember, friends, subscribe.